Good afternoon and welcome to the News Roundup for Thursday, October 9, 2025. I'm Bill Thomas, and here's what's happening right now. Jubilation in the streets. People around the world celebrating President Trump for his pivotal role in brokering a peace deal between Israel and Hamas. An old deal is new again. Canada's Prime Minister raising the possibility of reviving the disputed Keystone XL pipeline project, which would carry massive amounts of crude oil into the U.S. And yeah, they're back. Mask mandates returning to a wealthy blue state county as officials warn of the growing risk of a COVID-19 rebound. Also, Vladimir Putin makes a shocking admission about a deadly mistake involving the Russian military. And there's this. President Trump now backing a push to put his smiling mug on a brand new U.S. greenback. We'll tell you how much dough the commander-in-chief thinks he's worth. And yeah, spoiler alert, he's actually worth much more than he thinks. All this and more coming up right now on the Big Roundup. We have so much to get to today, and we begin in the Middle East, where Israelis and Palestinians alike are dancing in the streets with joy as they celebrate the possibility of a long overdue ceasefire in the war that's been devastating the Gaza Strip. In the battled enclave, residents could be heard repeatedly chanting President Trump's name and cheering wildly at the prospect of an end to the fighting. Over in Israel, people were also celebrating wildly, dancing, waving American flags, and calling for Trump to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. In the meantime, international leaders from Europe, the UN, and all over the planet are praising President Trump's remarkable achievement in putting together the 20-point peace plan that brought Israel and Hamas to the negotiating table. They say it provides a welcome relief to all of the suffering while laying the groundwork for a lasting peace throughout the entire region. Now, in a nutshell, the deal calls for an immediate halt to the 2-year-old war, the exchange of all 48 remaining Israeli hostages for a couple thousand Palestinian prisoners, and a staged withdrawal of Israel's military from occupied Gaza. It also allows humanitarian aid to begin flowing immediately into Gaza while requiring Hamas to completely disarm. Now, for his part, President Trump says that he's planning to fly to Egypt and take part in the upcoming ceremonial signing of the peace agreement between Israel and Hamas. He also says that while he's in the Middle East, he'll give a speech to the Israeli parliament and that the hostage exchange, it could be just days away. Final thought, this is the News Roundup Lowdown. Now, the tragic war which Hamas began with Israel, it's not exactly over, not yet. But these new developments clearly suggest that this could be the beginning of the end to a deadly, destructive, and entirely unnecessary war. However, all involved parties and outsiders, people observing this from all over the world who would celebrate this progress, should do so with an abundance of caution. You'll recall that prior ceasefires, they've been agreed to but not adhered to. And while this pause is certainly a good sign, there's still the potential for additional conflict. Another critical point of interest, which some might object to, we hope Israel is not getting shortchanged. Hamas will release 48 hostages, and only 20 of those hostages are believed to still be alive. On the other hand, 2,000 Palestinian prisoners, they'll be released by Israel, and some might question whether or not this is a fair and equitable exchange. Terminating a war, it's never easy, but both sides appear to be making substantial concessions. Forward progress is being made, and if all goes according to plan, the hostage and prisoner exchanges are expected to begin either Monday or Tuesday. Now, your thoughts on enormous changes happening right now in the Middle East, and drop us a note. We're at newsroundupwithbill@gmail.com. Now, producer Davey, this is not the biggest news story we've had today. This is maybe the biggest news story we've had all week, maybe all month, and perhaps even all year. And I would imagine people are highly enthusiastic about this. So who do we start with?
Oh, yeah, Bill. We start with Mary in Frankfort, Kentucky.
Hello, Mary. What are you thinking?
She says, hallelujah. I really hope this peace deal sticks. The world needs a ray of hope, and if President Trump pulls it off, he truly deserves the big prize.
Yeah, and he's been pushing for that big prize, that Nobel Peace Prize. And if anyone ever deserved it, that's President Trump. He's done a heck of a lot in a pretty brief period of time. Didn't think it would take this long, but this was a war that started, as you recall, during the prior administration, during the Biden administration. I've always said on this program, any war which starts during the Biden administration will come to an end during the Trump administration. Next up, it's going to be Russia and Ukraine. Appreciate you checking in. And Davey, who's up next?
Okay, Bill, here's Omar, who's writing to us today from Dover, Delaware.
Hi, Omar.
He says, call me a cynic, but I have serious doubts that Israel will stick to their end of the bargain. As soon as they get their hostages back, they'll turn around and finish the job.
Absolutely not. Israel is a stand-up country. And look, for those who criticized Israeli Prime Minister all along, Benjamin Netanyahu, just a reminder, he fought for his country, for his countrymen being held hostage, and for the family and friends of those hostages. Israel has sent a clear message to the world that they are a force to be reckoned with. And the whole world right now should stand up and say thank you to President Donald Trump for having Israel's back. Israel will agree to this termination of this war, and they will stand by what they sign off on. All right, change things up just a bit now and turn our focus to our country's pressing energy needs and the potential revival of a controversial pipeline project which could help solve part of the problem. Canada's Prime Minister and President Trump now considering the possibility of resurrecting a deal to construct the disputed Keystone XL pipeline, and that would pump millions of gallons of crude oil into the U.S. every day. So, the Canadian company which was building that pipeline, they pulled the plug on the Keystone project after then President Joe Biden canceled their permit on his first day in the White House several years ago due to what he was calling climate concerns. Now, our two nations are in talks to kickstart the pipeline's construction once again, and as part of the comprehensive trade agreement, which also takes into consideration and potentially lowers our country's extremely high tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. So, the Keystone XL pipeline would carry crude oil from Western Canada to Nebraska, where it would then connect to other pipelines that feed American refineries on the Gulf Coast. Canadian officials in favor of the deal, they say it would be the cheapest, fastest, and least complicated way to move their oil to those facilities. And they're hoping to use the pipeline as leverage and try to convince the Trump administration that due to the growth of energy required to run AI, the U.S. desperately needs access to Canada's resources in order to keep the cost of electricity down for the American public. That's kind of a good point. A final thought, this is the News Roundup Lowdown. Now, the Keystone XL pipeline project, a brilliant idea, essential to our country's energy demands, and it was already a deal in the making during President Trump's first term. A short time later, a guy called Joe Biden became president, and in all his infinite wisdom, he put the kibosh on the big deal. So, the U.S. currently imports oil from a number of countries, including Mexico, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Brazil, and some others. And rumor has it that our nation's strategic oil reserves are right now at an unreasonably low level, which, in my estimation, compromises our national security. Now, in an effort to keep our country safe, well fortified, and more well stocked with tons and tons of black gold, it's critical to get this pipeline up and running. And think about this. An extra 35 million gallons of crude coming in daily from Canada to the U.S. might just help bring our fuel prices down. And in some parts of the U.S. right now, hopefully our editor Pranav has a picture over my shoulder. Gasoline here in Southern California, San Francisco, Northern California as well, close to $5 a gallon. Some places even a bit more. Hey, talk to us, share your thoughts and comments on the big pipeline, and we're at newsroundupwithbill@gmail.com. And Davey, who's up first?
Okay, Bill, here's one from Matt in Newport, Rhode Island.
Okay, hi, Matt.
He says, the reason the pipeline deal was canceled is because a whole bunch of people don't want it. The answer to our country's power needs isn't fossil fuels, it's green energy.
Absolutely not. We need that oil. We need that to fortify our energy reserves right here in the States. We have plenty of oil here as well. We have plenty of people across the country we can pull that oil in from. But this deal was already in place. We got to get it back in place. Biden, unfortunately, knocked it down, but we are going to bring it back. Appreciate you checking in. You got that one wrong. Green energy, not so much. And who's up next?
Okay, Bill, here's one from Biff in Waco, Texas.
Hi, Biff. Welcome to the program.
He says, we are in an existential AI race with China, and we need all the help we can get. Thankfully, we have a great man in charge who knows the score and is doing all he can to meet our energy needs.
Yeah, a great man in charge right here and in Canada as well. And look, nothing trumps national security. Without an ample supply of oil, green energy, you got to be kidding. The U.S. could be left in a very vulnerable position. Also, on top of getting this deal with Canada done and replenishing our strategic reserves here in the States, we need to get back to drilling right here at home. There's an old expression for that. Escapes my memory. Davey, isn't it something like dig, baby, dig or something like that?
No, Bill, it's drill, baby, drill.
That's the one. We'll switch things up just a bit now and turn our attention to a county in California's wine country, which is imposing a brand new mask mandate on their citizens. The Sonoma County Department of Public Health claims that right now, at the beginning of flu season, there's a rapidly growing risk of coming down with the latest strain of COVID-19. As a result, they're ramping up the call for everyone over 6 months old to get their annual COVID vaccines and ordering anyone who enters certain healthcare facilities to start wearing a mask. That directive includes nursing homes, long-term healthcare sites, rehab centers, and a bunch more. Officials say they're making the move in order to protect highly vulnerable people, such as the old and the sick, from coming down with COVID. They also say they're hoping to prevent doctors and nurses from becoming ill and creating staffing problems at local hospitals. Right now, the order goes into effect on November 1st and runs through the end of March. And a little salt on the wound, it's now set to be put in place for the same period every year until health authorities officially rescind their mandate sometime in the future. Well, it's back at square one here. As part of their directive, the county's health department is also recommending that everyone wear masks whenever they go to public places that just happen to be indoors. A final thought, this is the News Roundup Lowdown. It all sounds mildly peculiar. You've got one doctor in a Northern California county sounding the alarm and telling folks that if you go to certain healthcare facilities in the county, you have to wear a mask. Not everywhere in the county, just places she handpicks. All sounds logical and reasonable, I guess. Hey, look, here's the deal. Beginning next month and for 5 juicy months, to move about freely, in particular around the Get Well facilities, you got to mask up. Otherwise, I suppose they're going to kick you out. On top of that, the good doctor also says, get in line for some more of that juice. Yeah, she says all humans 6 months and older, they ought to get jabbed again with a COVID-19 shot. And what might be next? Wear a mask, get another shot, put the gloves on, work from home, have no contact with anybody, and don't forget about the social distancing. And, oh yeah, don't forget to keep on sanitizing. Hey, Producer Davey, it's kind of like that cartoon character Yogi Bear. Remember Yogi Bear?
Yeah, I remember Yogi Bear, Bill.
Yeah, it's kind of like that cartoon character Yogi Bear said all those years ago. It's deja vu all over again.
No, Bill, that wasn't Yogi Bear. That was baseball player Yogi Berra.
Is there a difference?
Yeah, there's a difference. Yogi Berra is a very famous baseball player, Bill.
I get the two yogis confused. All right, so what do you make of all this? Share your thoughts and your comments with us. We're at newsroundupwithbill@gmail.com. Davey, to the email bag. This one's got me a little concerned. What are folks saying?
You're not alone, Bill.
Yeah.
Here's one from Xavier in Bradenton, Florida.
Hello, Xavier.
And he says, I thought we'd seen the last of this nonsense. Something's very wrong out there in California, and this is all the proof we need.
Yeah, this sounds like one of those things which begins in one particular area, then it spreads to a larger area, then more cities and states glom on, and before you know it, they've got the whole country running scared, avoiding contact with other humans and standing in line for yet another one of those jabs. The way I see it, we have an immune system. You got to stop down, think about this for a second, and let your body do its job. Now, some additional headlines we're keeping a very close watch on here in the News Roundup newsroom. As part of the ongoing shutdown of the federal government, the IRS now furloughing nearly half of its workforce. No kidding, leaving most of their operations shut down and taxpayers facing lengthy delays when business eventually returns to normal, if it returns to normal. Half the workforce is gone, so I'm thinking out loud, maybe one half of the country should avoid filing their taxes. And I'm just trying to ease the workload of the employees who still have a gig. Why should they double up and be there 12, 14 hours a day? Moving along, and a bit of a follow-up to a story we shared with you on yesterday's program. California Governor Gavin Newsom vetoing a bipartisan bill which sought to raise salaries for firefighters throughout the Golden State. Good old California. Newsom claiming the move would cost the state far too much money, and coming just months after they battled a couple of the most destructive wildfires in California's history. Firefighters saving lives, protecting property, risking their own lives on the job every single day, but he can't afford a little bit of a raise for these life-saving men and women. It's disgraceful. And that guy, by the way, wants to be your president. Now, some developing international news. Russian President Vladimir Putin admitting that his country's air defense system is to blame for the downing of a passenger jet from Azerbaijan, which crashed last December, killing 38 of the 67 people on board. Putin calling the incident a tragic accident and saying that missiles which were targeting a Ukrainian drone exploded near that passenger plane while it was trying to land at a Russian airport. And I'm just thinking out loud, but if Putin had not brutally attacked Ukraine in the first place, this incident, it never would have happened. We'll turn now to the world of business and a quick glance at a couple of stories which are currently making headlines in finance, also in commerce, and a bunch more. Retail giant Walmart now locking up a huge number of their basic products behind plexiglass in order to protect themselves from the skyrocketing theft which is plaguing their stores throughout the entire country. The move irritating a whole bunch of folks like you, folks like me, who complain it's now taken far too long to get their shopping done. That's why most of us are shopping online. As scooting along, Ford is now looking to increase the productivity of their employees by forcing them to come to the office at least 4 days a week. They say the new change to their prior work-from-home arrangement, that's going to help the company transform into an EV industry leader. And Davey, can a company that hires you and pays you to do a job, can they actually really do that, force you to come to work and work?
Yeah, Bill, they can. That's why they call it work.
Wow, if they made me work, I might file a complaint with Human Resources. That's just too much. And some pressing news involving our country's trade impasse with China. America's struggling soybean farmers saying they're now feeling the heat from the ongoing stalemate because the communist regime is refusing to buy their crops, resulting in a significant impact to their bottom line. And now time for a quick look at the lighter side of news, and here is what's going on. And we're going to kick things off today with President Trump, who's now looking to etch himself even further into our nation's history by throwing his weight behind a push to print his smiling face on, get this, a brand new $250 bill. According to the congressman who's actually leading the growing movement, the president is worthy of the honor because he's restoring our country to glory, showing that American strength is the key to peace, and reminding people that our country's best days, they lie ahead of us. Some other proposals which have been floating around include renaming the Kennedy Center after the president, rebranding the D.C. Metro as the Trump Train. I like that. And even adding his grinning likeness to Mount Rushmore with President Nixon and all the rest of those smiling faces.
Bill,
only on the...
Bill,
yes.
President Nixon is not on Mount Rushmore.
Oh, I don't remember all the faces, but I could have sworn I saw his face up there. I'll have to look at the pictures. Only on the rarest occasions do I ever call out President Donald J. Trump. 47, if you will, but when he gets it wrong, he gets it wrong. And this one, he got wrong. For the president to even suggest that his smiling face and golden locks should ever adorn our nation's $250 bill, that's all kinds of wrong. And it reminds me of an old saying, go big or go home. The thing is, in today's economy, 250 clams doesn't buy much. So I'm going to be pushing for the president's face to adorn the $500 bill. And you can sign off on that by sending us an email right now. We're at newsroundupwithbill@gmail.com. America, only you can make this happen. You and me. And, of course, engineer Jamie. Now, normally on the program, this is where we would stop and talk about everybody's favorite sport, full contact badminton. But today we're going to switch things up just a bit and talk about a sport that's kind of like badminton, only it's a little bit different. And here's what's up. A 21-year-old sumo wrestler in Japan, rapidly working his way up the ladder of success, and he's on the fast track to becoming a grand champion. And remarkably, he hails from Ukraine, and he's been at it for just a few years. The budding superstar bailed out of his native land shortly after the Russian invasion in 2022, and since then he's been dedicating himself to the highly regimented life of a sumo wrestler, living and breathing the sport around the clock. And he's been training like there's no tomorrow. Says that while he hopes to provide a beacon of hope for his embattled countrymen, right now he's laser focused on making everyone proud by bulking up, bearing down, and continuing his meteoric rise to the very top of his favorite sports. This guy is a phenomenal talent. He speaks fluent Ukrainian. His Japanese, it's not half bad, and he competes well on the sumo circuit. He's got a pretty nifty bathrobe, if we have a picture of that. That is a nifty robe, and he's no 90-pound weakling, tipping the scales at 275 pounds. And he can bench press, check this out, 460 pounds. I'll tell you, this guy is just amazing. I'm a big fan of this guy.
Hey, Bill, you were a sumo wrestler a few years back, weren't you?
Look, Davey, I told you never bring that up here on the program. And for our editor, Pranav, please keep all those pictures of me from my sumo wrestling days off of this show. Yeah, I used to look real good in that mawashi, but please, Pranav, no pictures with my name down at the bottom of the picture, which reads Bill Thomas, Pretend Sumo Wrestler World Champion. Pranav, I'm warning you. You really shouldn't have brought that up, Producer Davey. This was supposed to be a story about the Ukrainian sumo wrestler in Japan, not about me. Now I'm kind of embarrassed. Thoughts or questions on sumo wrestling or presidential currency? Let's hear from you. And we're at newsroundupwithbill@gmail.com. Davey, who do we go to first?
Okay, Bill, we start off with Rex in Laramie, Wyoming.
Hello, Rex. What's cooking?
He kind of agrees with you, Bill. He says, in this case, the president is mistaken.
Yeah.
At the very least, he should put his face on the $1,000 bill,
Hey.
if not the $1 million bill.
Hey.
Now you're talking.
I was kind of thinking a little too small, the $500 bill, but the $1,000 or the $1 million bill, I kind of like that. I appreciate you checking in, Rex. And who's up next?
Yeah, here's another view from Kim in Omaha, Nebraska.
Hi, yeah, Kim.
She says, I'm not surprised that Trump wants to put his face on the $250 bill.
Yeah.
I'm just surprised he doesn't want to put his face on every single bill that's in circulation.
Let me make a note of that. And Dave, if you can make a note of that as well, that's food for thought. I kind of like that. We'll start with the $250, maybe get it up to the $500, then on all the currency. Davey, we just struck pay dirt right there. All right, time for one more, and we got to wrap it up.
Okay, here's one from Stan in Santa Monica, California.
The west side of L.A. What's up, Stan?
He says, Bill, the idea of you wearing a sumo diaper is cruel and unusual punishment.
Yeah. Well, it's not exactly a sumo diaper. It's called the Mawashi, and I've been told I look pretty dapper in that Mawashi. And now it is time for us to call it a wrap on the Thrill Thursday edition of the Big News Roundup. But before we go, and as we do each day here on the program, we like to share with you a very notable quote, and these very familiar words come to us today from the great Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, who said, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." And Davey, that was a beautiful quote. And then in subsequent years, I believe they made a movie out of that starring Robert Mitchum and Gregory Peck called Cape Fear, based on that quote, right?
You know, Bill, that has nothing to do with the quote. FDR's quote was from his first inauguration speech.
Oh.
You're talking about a movie that came out 25 years later.
You can see the confusion, fear and fear. I just kind of put them all together. Roosevelt was an American politician who served as president of the U.S. from 1933 until his death in 1945. He is the longest serving president in our country's history, his time at the helm stretching from the Great Depression all the way through World War II. FDR, he's our guy. And now it is time for us to bust on out. But before we do, don't forget the News Roundup motto. Ask not what your podcast can do for you. Ask what you can do for your podcast. What can you do? Simply subscribe to the program so you never miss even a single episode. And now it looks like our time is officially up, so have an awesome day today. Please stay safe. I don't think it's too much to ask that we all continue to watch out for one another. And with that, we'll ask Engineer Jamie to gently dim the lights. Let's fade to black. And we'll see you right back here tomorrow, finally a Friday. And David, you're sure Cape Fear had nothing to do with...
Yeah, I'm absolutely sure of that. I can't believe you got that Cape Fear quote wrong, and you mixed up FDR with Cape Fear. I mean, they're completely different things. FDR was the president if he was a...